Welcome to SIGGRAPH Asia for all everybody who's participating from there. We're super excited for tonight's special event, special live stream. NVIDIA Omniverse team is happy to include some very special guests, as you'll meet in a few minutes. Not only from Animal Logic and Wet Effects, but great developers from the NVIDIA team are here. We're going to be talking about OpenUSD. Super excited to take your questions and your comments. So start saying hi to us in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. And then I'll go through some quick announcements. Feel free to start posting your questions and comments. We are going to have a full hour, and time permitting, we are planning to go ahead. Let me add Seb here. We're planning to, there he is. We're going to go ahead and head to the Omniverse Discord server. So if you haven't joined our Discord server, now's a good time to do that. Discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse. That way you can participate after our panelists. So before we get going, let's go ahead and go some quick announcements. There's something big happening in March. Most people here will probably know that is GTC, March 17th to the 21st, our first in-person GTC in years. So we're very excited, and don't worry if you can't make it out there for some reason or another. We are going to be doing a lot of virtual stuff at the same time. Many of us in the community team will be there, and we'll be live streaming some stuff from there as well. So it should be fun. But if you are going, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to meet and help connect you to some developers on the team who will be there to help you with your projects and your business. Feel free to shoot me an email, edmar@nvidia.com, or say hi to the team on Discord. We'll be happy to set up a meeting for you there. Lots of amazing sessions and content. Things are in full swing here. If you check out the website, nvidia.com/GTC, you're going to see a lot more information and sessions I think will be going live any day now. So keep your eyes tuned for that. Speaking of eyes, we just announced our Winter Art Challenge with the NVIDIA Studio team. If you want to see some cool stuff, go ahead and search for that hashtag now, and you'll see some amazing artwork. Also on the developer side of things, we got some cool developer submissions as well. We would love to see what you're working on with OpenUSD. Go ahead and post your holiday-themed developer or creative render or video, and use the hashtag Winter Art Challenge. Share it with the world. We also have a showcase channel on our Discord server. If you'd like to post it there for some feedback as well, we love seeing that. That's going to go through January 31st. As I mentioned, welcome everybody from SIGGRAPH Asia. We have a lot of stuff happening at SIGGRAPH Asia all through the week. Look at some of those sessions: fundamentals of OpenUSD, creating digital worlds, OpenUSD for 3D creators, ecosystem. You can go to the events page on the NVIDIA website to find out more. But it's going to be an action-packed week. Many announcements happening through the week. So keep your eyes open for our website, blog, and our Discord for more on that. The Isaac team is doing alternating office hours now. So every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, you can either catch the Isaac Sim topic or Isaac Ross. I believe the next one is going to be Isaac Ross, if my memory serves me correctly, this week. We post these up on the Ed event calendar. We'll post that link in a second. This is your opportunity to ask the developers on the team your burning questions on any development issues you may be having, or some optimization or performance. The team's there ready to show off some new features and also take your questions live. So take full advantage of that. And then finally, this is none other than Aaron Luck, who's with us tonight. Actually has done an amazing series on universal scene description. We have a series on our YouTube channel with a great playlist that we're continually adding to for people just learning about OpenUSD for the first time to all the way to veterans. There's something to take away for everybody from this video series. We'll post a link in the chat, and we hope that not only tonight's live stream, but also that series will help you on your journey with OpenUSD. Speaking of which, so that's why we're all here. Look at these bright, happy, excited faces we've got. I see a bunch of people from our community jumping in the chat. Great to see everybody. You know me already. I'm enjoying my wonderful colleague Jen here. Hey Jen, Ashley, and I want to introduce Maddie. I'll let Aaron introduce Maddie because Maddie shifted to a different team. But Jen, Ashley, and I are very happy to have our guests here today. And Aaron, you've assembled a dream team here for OpenUSD. Why don't you tell me who you got?
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'll briefly reintroduce myself as well. So I'm Aaron. I'm the product manager for USD and Omniverse. Prior to this, I was a developer at Pixar on USD. and Presto, Titsine, a lot of its preceding and adjoining technologies, and 3D pipelines and interchange has kind of been a theme in my career for the past 2 decades or so. But yeah, like Edmar said, we have a very strong panel of USD experts today, and I'll have them introduce themselves one by one. So I'll start with Paolo.
Hi, I'm Paolo. I've been a weta for 15 years now. I joined, moved from Italy to New Zealand. I joined for the first Avatar. I've been head of R&D and head of software engineering for a few years. And then I moved into principal engineering role. I'll skip all the Unity bits, but I've been from Weta Digital into Unity and now back into Weta FX. And the last 3 years, we've been working with, maybe 4, with USD to try to integrate it in our pipeline and start getting all the next movies all done with USD.
Great, thank you, Paolo. And next, Seb.
Oh yeah, I'm Seb. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I started at Weta about 13 years ago, and my first 7 about years were working as an effects TD and doing crazy effects on things like Hobbit and Man of Steel, and at some point then I've moved into software engineering, and I've been working as a lead software engineer there, focusing on USD procedurals for the last couple of years. So coming up with schemas, seeing kind of like how we can have prim adapters and on all of these things, and take our procedural pipeline that existed in Maya and RenderMan and all of these things into USD. How can we make this work with all the different groups, the lighters, the FX TDs, the modelers, and integrating the different workflows with USD. Yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Super exciting stuff. And then next, Chris.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join. I'm very excited to be here with all of you. I joined Animal Logic about 7 years ago on the Assets TD team. We look after the modeling, rigging, and servicing departments. And I started my journey there as on the Lego Ninjago movies, and then moving on Peter Rabbit, and then our USD pipeline evolution. So I've been there with the team, evolving all of our workflows to adopt USD. And recently, I've been now the supervising TD for the core assets TD team, and continuously looking into improving our asset structures and leveraging USD in many ways to maximize our efficiency and abilities of producing content. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, awesome, Chris. All right, Maddie, I'm sure the audience knows you, but yeah, everyone can meet now. Maddie 2.0. Go ahead and then reintroduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Maddie. I'm a huge fan of the Lego Ninjago movie. Thank you. I watch it all the time with my son. I got my USD journey started at DreamWorks Animation. I wanted more USD, and NVIDIA was doing cool stuff with USD, so I moved over to NVIDIA into the community team to teach USD and share all the stuff that I love about USD with y'all. But most recently, I moved into Aaron's team to focus more on USD developer experience and see how we can improve that in the coming years.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely room for improvement there. So Maddie's help is more than welcome. Awesome. And then bring it home, Jens. You might be muted, Jens.
Thanks. Good start. All right. So yeah, you've heard my name now a few times. But I guess my story is that I've been building digital production pipelines for the last 20 years or so. And some things have changed a lot and others not so much. And so yeah, in the beginning for me there were like TV shows and commercials, then some big VFX movies. Fur, feathers, previs, post-viz, and all this other stuff in between. And then for a while, I was Lord of the Bricks at doing all the Lego stuff. So met Christian there. We then sort of did it all over again, like this whole pipeline thing, but on USD. And so yeah, fast forward to today, I'm really excited to like sort of push USD further out of the media and entertainment industries and into the industrial metaverse at NVIDIA. So yeah, that's me. And then I'd also like to just maybe quickly talk about the upcoming USD related program at SIGGRAPH. Yeah,
Go for it.
Cool. Yeah. So I'll try and be quick because there's a fair bit, but it's which is cool. And yeah, we'll have a course tomorrow about OpenUSD, and so that's called Demystifying OpenUSD, end-to-end data pipelines and workflows. And so I think this one's going to be really interesting, especially for developers, but also for TDs and pipeline supervisors, and also like product owners and people who are sort of like looking at USD from a bit further up. And then we'll hear about Omniverse from Omniverse developers about how to transform businesses digitally with OpenUSD. We'll hear about Hydra 2.0, proceduralism. We'll talk about Fabric, which is the sort of vectorized, solution for fast USD runtimes in Omniverse, as well as materials and USD Shade. And then I'm also super excited because Steve Agland from Animal Logic will be joining us for like a really awesome segment on procedural recipes as scene data, which has a lot of detail and content behind it. So that's going to be a really cool segment, I think. And then on Thursday, the day after, we'll have the NVIDIA Day at SIGGRAPH, which also has a lot of USD content. So we'll be having a lecture series which kicks off at 10, and we'll be talking about USD fundamentals, tool building for digital worlds with USD and AI. We'll talk about Gen AI for animation, and I think there's even some characters, some USD characters that we'll be looking at like as a hands-on exercise. And we'll hear about collaborative workflows with USD and Adobe Substance Painter 3D and Maya and Omniverse. And I think about this one, I'm really excited because I think that aligns really closely with like a use case that Amazon Robotics has at the moment, which is super cool. And then in the afternoon, there's a nice long session with Meet the Experts where we can just talk to each other and hang out and really get into details. And we'll also be talking about the Alliance for OpenUSD at that time. And yeah, I think USD will probably also make an appearance in some of the other talks, Pixar Renderman and so on. But yeah, I'm just excited to see what comes up. So I hope to see you there. Yeah. Sorry.
So much. And actually, I was just thinking, it would be great for anyone who's just tuning in, who hopped on this channel, or maybe an Omniverse developer just coming in kind of new to the system. Before we take a deeper dive into the topic today, Aaron, would you like to just give a brief overview of what OpenUSD and USD, are they the same thing? So people, kind of understand the terms we're using?
Sure. Yeah. So USD has been the long-standing term for universal scene description. Pixar sort of rebranded it as OpenUSD last year for a number of reasons. The biggest one being a better search engine optimization, right? So less collisions with United States dollar and things like that. Especially since the old mailing list was called USD interest, right, which brought up all sorts of things about interest rates and all that stuff. So OpenUSD is the first foray into really making that more clear. But there you can effectively use the terms interchangeably, like certainly as we're talking informally right now. No one's gonna slap your hand and say, no, it's called OpenUSD now, right? Like, so except maybe Google search, but yeah, you can feel free to use the terms interchangeably, I think.
Great. Okay. All right, that's good. And okay, so we have a lot to talk about today, and I also want to thank the community for some people submitted questions before the live stream and submitted a couple of videos. We'll play those at different points during the stream. But I think, Aaron, we'd like to get started, maybe kind of going around here with some cool topics.
Yep, cool. So the overall theme today is about asset structuring. And this has been a long-standing theme, certainly with some of the community that we've seen in Omniverse and in the larger USD community, right? There's often this question of like, what are the best practices in USD, right? And it's quite a broad question. So some of us took a stab at sort of organizing some principles, around it. There's been some good documentation about it in ASWF Assets Subworking Group as well, things like that. But in particular, this summer at SIGGRAPH, we put together a couple courses, right, and some papers around it. So Paolo here presented a very good talk on intents in USD, because what you're intending to do with your USD data informs a lot about how you structure it, right? And from in the Omniverse side, we sort of carved out these 4 characteristics of asset structuring: legibility, modularity, performance, and navigability, right? And they very much complement Paolo's idea of intents, right? Depending on what you're intending to do, legibility might be more important than performance, and so on, right? And so recently, we took another stab at distilling even more information around how do we onboard even broader audiences with these principles, right? And how do these principles scale to personas who are, particularly don't come from the media and entertainment world, where in the kind of pipelines that we're used to there, certainly what Jens was talking about, anyone who's worked on a fur and feather pipeline knows that aggregating data from different sources is sort of like standard practice, right? But that's not true everywhere in 3D right now. So we really wanted to onboard more folks with that. And in particular, the two areas of USD that we decided to expound on a little bit more for audiences is model hierarchy and SIGGRAPH instancing, in terms of 2 particular mechanisms within USD with which to organize your data. So we put together some documents that go into a little bit, try to explain that to a more broad audience as to when you might use them and why. And so again, that complements all the work that's going on in the community around that. We see asset structuring as there's a lot of parallels there with design patterns and programming, right? So just like there's no one design pattern that's always going to fit all of your programming needs, there's not necessarily one asset structure that's going to fit all your needs. So we try to classify them in terms of patterns that you would use for different cases. And so the larger picture that I think we're going to see is that there's going to be source asset structures flowing through USD. And I suspect that as more and more intents arise, the way that data is presented in the runtime could be compiled from that source data into different other structures that may match different intents. We see this a little bit in, for example, a SIGGRAPH demo that we did earlier this summer as well, in which the design data for a car was also used in producing advertising for that same car, right? And that's sort of a new concept, right? Usually, the data that's used for designing products aren't necessarily the same data that's used for the media and entertainment side of things. But I think USD is kind of opening up those kind of possibilities, right? In terms of the source data that travels and can get compiled into different data layouts and structures in runtime. But what we want to talk about today is just structures in general, right, around USD, and what kind of decisions, what kind of are the decision points around those structures. And that's why we assembled this great panel who have a lot of experience in terms of navigating that journey. So I'll go ahead and get started. We have some seed questions, and I think we have some questions from the community as well. So I will start with the question about model hierarchy. Just what role does model hierarchy play in the asset structures and the pipelines of the folks on the panel today? And I'll start with Paolo and Seb.
So defining model hierarchy, like aside of the benefit in terms of USD filtering all the frames and traversing the data, it becomes important to try to say like, what are the kinds of the frame that you do have in your scene, in a way that you can identify whether what are the shapes that are part of maybe the same asset, and then try to potentially version your assets. And when you start querying the data to know whether you need to apply opinions on at an asset level or opinions at the shape levels and all of that, identifying the kinds of all the frames, it's very important. We do have custom kinds as well, that we sort of start from existing kinds and we try to extend with more features that are needed for us for the pipeline. But if you are working on a pipeline and try to publish assets and version assets and try to get a sense of what is the content of your scene, model hierarchy is definitely important.
Yeah, no, totally. I think one thing that we've done is like we obviously have assets, and as Paolo described, right, like the models are made up of shapes, and there are certain bits and pieces of hierarchy in there. And if you look at Paolo's talk from SIGGRAPH and the intents talk, he lines out kind of like that we have different kinds of representations. So there are certain kind of like points in the hierarchy that we want to identify within the asset, and then also in the the assembly that makes up a scene, right? And this could be either a layout just with a table in a room in a house, or more complex things like creatures that have wardrobe and these kind of things. So right, like, so there are different kinds of assemblies, and helping putting little markers in form of kind of the model hierarchy, and defining kinds on these and setting kinds on the individual hierarchy points is super helpful for tooling and stuff to help navigate. Okay, artist selected something here. Where am I? Like, what are the things that I'm allowed to do and what I can do here? So yeah, I think it's plays quite an important role for us.
Yeah, great. It's so nice to have like these demarcated high-level modules of your scene to reason about. Yeah, Chris, what's your journey with model hierarchy at Animal?
Thank you, Aaron. I think it's fairly similar to what Paolo and Seb have already described. And to me, there are the two main places in which I would describe the relevance of the model hierarchy are in the part where somebody is building the world, like we have our environment or set dressing department that is just putting together all of the environments that we will see our characters on our films in, and the workflow that is consuming the world. And one thing that we have noticed is that our current workflows allow people or the artists to still think about the higher level concepts that they are used to, like even from before we adopted USD, like, they know what is a prop and what is a character and what is an environment. And the way we are right now using the model hierarchy is to try to help as much as possible automatically to tell when people are building the world, we assign specific kinds. For example, if they bring something that is already created as a set piece or a little piece of an environment, that is already a kind of component. And it all happens under the hood, like the artists are not really thinking too much about that, but they're just bringing set pieces together one after the other, or they may bring already larger environments together into a bigger one. And internally, we're always creating a valid model hierarchy. And at one point, when we started speaking a little bit more about the actual kinds or the USD terminology with people, it's a little bit of a learning curve for people to start digesting all of this information. And then people may be asking, well, why do I care? Why do I care about this? Like, all I know is that I'm just bringing things together, right? So there's a little bit of a balance in how much do we require people to make decisions, or we just do things automatically for them. And then on the other side, the use of model hierarchy allows a lot of our tooling to pick and choose what to show to the consumers, like to the artists. Like in the context of an animation, we may already know that everything, that the agreement in the pipeline is that the things that are atomic or self-contained will be presented like that to the artist. So we use the model hierarchy to encode that and to communicate between our different workflows on what is important in the world that you are just interacting with. Yep.
Great. Yeah, I think the three of you hit on a really key point here, in that the fact that model hierarchy is encoded via kinds right now can be thought of somewhat as an implementation. Like, you get a lot of value out of that in that now you can reason about the model hierarchy. But then the people who are doing that don't necessarily care like what the individual kinds are, right? Which I think is pretty interesting, and I think that kind of tees you up, Jens, in sort of like as we expand into the automotive and manufacturing world, where a lot of the DCCs don't have concepts that necessarily map to kind. Like talk a little bit about like model hierarchy in that ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think what's the first thing that sort of was like a bit of a interesting moment for me is when I realized that the model hierarchy, like the model, is like a model kit, right? So like so just like as a kid or something, like you got a toy car to put together and put some paint on it and like build a model. Lego model. Like that's the kind of model that we're talking about here. Like that's why it's called a model. So it's not really got anything to do with modeling in like a CG pipeline context. It's more or less like it's a model kit. And so then you have kinds of models, right? So you've got the component kinds and you've got the built-in ones. You've got assemblies and groups and those ones. And you need to sort of like pay a bit of attention to the right grammar there so that you make, valid grammar of model kinds. And then, yeah, like Christian was saying, I guess like you start expanding and, you start adding your own and you can subclass from the existing ones. And you can build and you can, in your studio, you can have the ones that make sense to you and your users, and that give meaning to your scene hierarchies. And then instead of just looking at a hierarchy of X forms and meshes, you start looking at a hierarchy of, things that mean something to you. And then I guess taking it into other industries, like we're going to have to work out, where in the hierarchy is a component, because that's sort of like your center point, I guess, of your model hierarchy, or your atomic bits, so if you were to look at I think Matt Courage has given a really good analogy for that, which is, like a table of contents for a book, for example. Like if you were to read the table of contents, those are the components basically of your scene, right? So that's your index of what you want to see. That's what the scene is about. And so, yeah, you need to decide basically, in a factory also, let's say, what are the things that I would want to see as my table of contents, like what are the things that are important to me. And so you may choose that those are like your assembly stations, and so if the whole thing is about the cells that you have and how the cells are arranged on your factory floor, let's say, or you might choose that it's the robots within the cell, that is your component. And then luckily, you have a way out to like add even deeper structures with subcomponents, which give you a fair bit of flexibility to then, add details sort of like underneath the component level, for various systems, not so much for the users, but maybe for your systems that need to interact with the data. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Maddie, your journey with model hierarchy so far, as you sort of learn about these newer contexts from all the industries that we're servicing.
I think probably a common thread and a theme that we'll probably hear tonight is involving domain experts in that discussion. And in Omniverse, we see model hierarchy and kinds in a very and at the forefront with the way that selections work in the viewport. And I know other DCCs have adopted that as well. So your domain experts, the users that are going to be interacting with that data, may really want to have input on how they work with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that gets to some of the questions that are going to come up later in this panel around like behaviors that you can hang off of nodes in the model hierarchy and other high-level asset structure presences. Great. Very cool. Jen and Ashley, feel free to jump in with any comments on any of these topics as we come across them. The next question is an asset structure something that you define once, like site-wide or show-wide, or is it something that's continuously evolving? Like, and if it is continuously evolving, how often have you updated your asset structure? What does that process look like? Let's start with you again, Paolo.
Yeah, I'm going to mention something, and then probably Seb, which has been deeply involved with this, has probably a lot more to say. But one thing that is important is to continue on what Mary said. Like we defined like our initial asset structure based on how the users wanted to interact with it. That was part of like, how do we make it so that they can see what the data will look like when they open it. The idea is to define it once, or maybe at least once you agreed on a version, try to define the spec of that asset structure and just put it on some sort of like versioning schema. But try to make sure that you don't maybe end up with a lot of them, even though like, it's reasonable to say that you could have different requirements for different departments, depending on whether they need to contribute back into our first asset structure. Then there is very important meaning in to try to keep it sort of a standard like on the show. And so once you are happy with one, then try to keep that one. But it is something that every time we implement something new, then we keep like changing it, because maybe we see like, benefits in doing something else. And so versioning the spec of the asset structure started to become important. But I would like to add that it's not just the result of how the asset structure looks like. It's also like, how do you get there? Like all the composition arcs that are involved in getting to the asset structure is something that we have changed, even if the final composed status of the actual structure is the same. We have changed a lot, like how we get to the point where we are now. And just to mention briefly, like it's an evolving situation. Like it's not, there is no one structure, we know that, but there are definitely structures that work better in the VFX pipeline and could definitely be useful in other pipelines as well.
Great, Seb.
Yeah, yeah. As Paul said, like this is something that's constantly evolving. I think maybe the third or fourth kind of like iteration we're on right now, and involving, as Mehdi said, like involving domain experts, involving the different departments in that discussion, where we want to go, how they want to have their data represented. I'll give you an example. Let's say in visual effects, you have to have a cracking window, and how this could be done is like you want to have this progressively cracking. Might be something that's achieved at the end in compositing. So a lighter will render the window unbroken, and then the lighter will render basically a cracked version of that. That's maybe doing that. So doing these two things, so you have one asset and you have the same asset, but in various stages. How do you represent these various stages? Is this represented through something that sits in the asset structure, right? Is there another representation, hey, or a variant, a cracked or non-cracked kind of like version of the asset? That's a decision, or is it something that it's done through a layer, that just added in, and through muting of layers in USD, you kind of achieve that effect. And I think this is kind of like, what's your intention? What do you want to achieve with that? Can you, with layers, express everything the same way as you would do with variants? I think that's one of the things that's makes us rethink our structures and say, like, okay, what's the best way to achieve the results that we're after? And it also depends, kind of like, and Paulo mentioned that, kind of like, who are the different groups that are contributing to these things, and at what level are they just contributing, on the geometry or model level, or on kind of like how it is assembled? If you have let's say you have a tree, and you want to have something that a moving tree, because the leaves and the branches should wiggle, kind of like, how is that represented? Was nothing that was part of our initial design, but we're thinking, okay, is this a variant or something that people then can switch over? So it's evolving, and I think I hope at some point we get to a kind of like something working for a show, and then use that through the show, and then take notes, and hopefully not make too many changes while the show is running, and then put this back into the next project.
Very cool. Yeah. Wow. Updating the asset structure in mid-show. So it sounds exciting. Cool. Yeah, Chris, what is like the life cycle of an asset structure look like for you?
I share a lot of similarities with what Paolo and Seb have expressed, and especially that last comment on updating an asset structure like or midway through a show. Yeah, and that does happen, and it's fun times when that happens. I would say that definitely yes, it's a continuous evolution of how do we do things as we find out what are the best ways for us to transmit information or to achieve certain goals. Probably just taking a little bit of a step back, one of the things that Jens may remember very presently is how to communicate about changes that we're expecting to make in our asset structure becomes very important in a facility that is just having a lot of people always interacting with asset structure. If only we have many people that can just change the way things are, there is a risk of removing predictability or like we want to avoid surprises, right? So a lot of the things that we're doing require us to speak a lot about what we're trying to do and to communicate this with just diagram stuff. Some of those are already shared publicly in our Animal Logic A-Lab assets documentation. You may see them as we call them the composition arc diagrams. And two of the main concepts there are what we call entities and fragments. And it is just a way we are using for us to split what are the contributions that some USD files are meant to express. So for example, we refer to entities as just the production concepts that people are used to, like characters, environments, or props. Like that's the complete thing, contribution of different departments. And then the fragments are the contents that the artists or other processes produce via DCC applications, so shaders or meshes or networks of other kinds. So in that, our main stable concept remains the entities. Like that has not changed as much in the recent shows, where the fragments continue to evolve. And probably one of the or two of the most recent updates that we have done recently, and this happened within the last year, are the introduction of inherit arcs in our global entities to allow broadcasting of changes, even just to play well with instancing, and having draw mode, texture cards for draw mode at the entity level, at the entity. Yes, sorry, for our entities that are of kind component. So all of these there are always little things that we're improving and changing, and sometimes the decision of whether we make a show adopt these changes depends on how backwards compatibility is this change. And otherwise, we just lock a show and we move on to the next one. And one of the way we use to lock shows is, as Paulo referred to, like the versioning. The way we control this is all of our assets are produced by a code. So we just have like a version control system that if we're required to produce assets at a different time, then we just use that other environment that has a different version of code. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting topic, and we could go for longer, but I'll stop there.
That's great. I love the different reasons why asset structures might evolve. Some of them are just from lessons learned over the course of a show, but then like you make a really, really good point, Chris, but some of it is adopting new USD features, or not new, but like new to your pipeline, like learning more about classes and inherits and folding them into your asset structure as well. I think that's definitely a natural evolution along a USD journey. And so I think we've pretty much established that. I'm pretty sure no one sticks to one asset structure now. So what are your thoughts to follow on to Chris's on like versioning and like communication, like contextualizing those shifts in asset structuring, especially in something as open as Omniverse, right?
Yeah. So I think the communication aspect again is very important. You want to let people know about the asset structures, or about the important bits at least that they need to find in them. And so don't. I would advise not to just sort of like produce USD and pass it on to someone, but just maybe give them a write-up with it or a document or something that is a little bit of, like this is my intent here, and this is what I want you to see in that. And diagrams can be very useful for that, and also for planning, I guess. So I guess before you start writing or producing USD, I would kind of go to a whiteboard, or, a digital one, and just kind of go, okay, like I'm going to make a USD file that's going to have these contents, and that's my asset interface, let's say, and these are the attributes that are important to have on the interface of my asset, and I want this to be a component, model, and so you start sort of building it up that way, and I guess it's the same in like software engineering too. Like you sort of don't want to start just by writing code straight away. Quite often, I mean, people do, but it's often better if you have a planning phase to begin with. And yeah, then the changes sort of become a part of that documentation process too, right? So like if you're then deciding to change something, you can just have that as a change log, essentially, right? Like, so now my new version of my asset structure is going to have these changes in it, and it becomes a lot easier for everybody who's involved to see, what they're dealing with. And then, yeah, I guess just lastly about like sort of how do you get into it and how do you build up? I think, it's also important that you certainly don't need to be complete, in the beginning. Like you just kind of start. And I'm giving a talk on this stuff and as a part of the course that we're having. But like, if you have a certain process that you're modeling, and you just have like all the parts, let's say, to begin with. Okay, like what are my USD files that describe the parts of like a coffee machine asset or something, and then you go like, I want to model now the manufacturing process. So how am I going to reference the coffee machines into my factory? And then how am I going to think about like how they build up over time through the different stations that the factory goes through and so on. And so you can just, add data and add scene description as you're sort of discovering more and more of your process. And, it's really then you're going to have successes along the way, but the road to like a complete end-to-end solution can be, you just, take your time with that, and eventually you'll get there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Maddie, parting thoughts on sort of like a evolution of asset structures.
I had one quick question for the panelists, and you can just jump in and answer. Aaron kind of put the idea together of evolving as to adopt new USD features. Did you all have things figured out like proxy models and cards and all that figured out up front, or is that something you tacked on afterwards as you felt comfortable adding it?
We do have a pretty well described like multiple representations of the same asset, but we have a mixed use of variants and purposes to try to describe like different representations of the same one. But we do want to start leveraging, and I want to see how that goes, like the new preview schemas in USD, and try to understand like how we could potentially use it more in the pipeline if we can extend like, the actual content. At the moment, it's just a thumbnail, but what if the preview becomes like an actual model that can actually be the preview of what you see inside that hierarchy from the print? But yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Well, we've got a great question from Christopher Scott, Omniverse ambassador, and also a great entrepreneur who's doing lots of really cool projects with Omniverse. I'm going to put it on the screen for everybody so everybody can see it. But it regards payloads. Let's take a look at this question from Chris. Payloads could be used so much better if there was a system to load a bounding box with a thumbnail icon as a payload. So your memory footprint would be low, but you would see the representations of all the assets, and you can right-click to load them. It'd be so cool, so you could open up a scene that normally would not fit in memory. Is there a solution for that currently?
Yeah, so there are definitely pieces in place for this. In particular, Paolo just mentioned the preview schemas, right, which is where thumbnails could potentially live. So USD itself has ways in which you can sort of set up all the inputs to something like this. I believe Storm, which is the GL renderer, already has support for drawing payloads as bounding boxes and things like that. But yeah, this is a really great feature request, I think. And what's interesting about it is that it ties a lot of these concepts together in terms of basically rewarding folks with good asset structures, right? In that a good asset structure would have the bounding box information lofted up above the payload, such that you wouldn't need to load the payload to get the bounding box, right? And then also the thumbnail in the preview schema and so forth. But I think I'll throw to Chris briefly, because what's interesting about this question is that it's a very interesting behavior for unloaded payloads, but I don't think it's the only interesting behavior that you could put. I think, Chris, you have some interesting preview behaviors as well on your content, if I understand correctly.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yes. I was just thinking about the cards that we're creating for.
That's exactly, that's what I was thinking about.
Yes. Like ideally, it could be possible for somebody to just load a shot and be able to quickly just see those texture cards instead of bounding boxes, and to just see texture cards, and to just confirm that is working for us, because we're not using that yet as an effort to open unloaded stages. Yeah, it's definitely the path to pursue, I think.
Right. And so you would go beyond even the from Christopher Scott's request, in that I think he was asking for a thumbnail, but I think you're looking more at like an array of texture cards, right? So that as you rotate around it, you would get, whichever card was most facing you, and so it would look 3D even, right? So,
yeah, exactly. For those unfamiliar with it, the cards are adapted to the bounding boxes of the object. So if we were to have extents hints already authored properly above the payload, as how you're describing, Karen, and having that plus the texture cards should give you like a bounding box with a texture for each of the axes. So if you rotate around, you would see more than just like a thumbnail.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So there's all sorts of features, behaviors that you could hang off of good asset structures that are like this. I think the interesting thing is formulating them into sort of like, standard data queries that could hang off of model hierarchies, such that each renderer can then decide how to implement these behaviors, right? So in ray trace renderers, how would you want these bounding boxes or these texture cards to react to light, if at all, right? And that kind of thing. So there's kind of, you want to leave those sort of implementation details open. But yeah, this is a great idea. Jens, Maddie, Seb, Paulo, any other thoughts on things that you could do with like unloaded payloads?
One thing that we are experimenting, because like large scenes is definitely one of our biggest problems. One thing that we are trying to experiment at the moment is that USD comes with a very powerful way of expanding the entire stage, right? Like, once you get there, like the whole composition arcs and everything, you pretty much get the whole thing ready, so you can query every single part of the stage. Viewing the data is the biggest problem, right? Even if you go with bounding boxes for every single frame that you get there, you might still have an issue in having a lot of lines in your viewport that doesn't really give you a good understanding of what's going on. So one thing that we are experimenting at the moment is the ability to use like the draw mode feature from USD, but at different hierarchy points. So you can actually move it up to like just set the draw mode bounding box at the very top of the hierarchy, and it gives you a very large bounding box. And then you start like going one level down, and you have like smaller bounding boxes, and then you can like expand and keep going in this way of sort of on demand, having all the bounding boxes up to the point where you have a good understanding of what's going on in the scene without overloading the viewport with like hundreds of millions of tiny bounding boxes that at the end, it's just a gray viewport. Like no matter how you render it, you don't get a good sense of what's going on. But that's definitely quite useful for especially when you mix GL rendering delegate versus your path tracers in the same viewport. It's definitely useful to have a sense of from a bounding box level, how big is the data that you got in your viewport.
Yeah. So I think when we were talking about the model hierarchy earlier, one of the reasons why you want to have that correct, like you want to follow the grammar of USD there, is because draw mode works on the model hierarchy, and so that behavior that you mentioned, Paulo, right? Like that works on that hierarchical behavior works on the model hierarchy with draw mode. And so when you set a parent to the bounding draw mode, then all the children get that inherited automatically, as long as for each of the valid model kinds that you have in your hierarchy. And so automatically, if you have your component is sort of reasonably sized, then your components are going to show up as bounding boxes. But not like all the prims within them, for example, right? So there's a correlation between draw mode and model hierarchy. What's the other thing I wanted to mention there? I feel like that's sometimes it can be a bit confusing with like payloads as well. So in USD, right, like the heavy data is lazily loaded. And so, you're only really like loading that data when you're displaying it, right? Like when you're rendering, quite often, like you'd see then it loads the big arrays into memory, and that's where the biggest slowdown sort of happens. But if you're not displaying the data, then it's not being loaded up front, even if you don't have payloads. So if you have a good structured model hierarchy, you can use draw mode. If you can use draw mode, you can avoid loading the data to render it, and therefore then your payloads don't become as important anymore. Like you can just load the entire stage. You get all your prims composed, but you set draw mode to bounce, let's say, and then you avoid loading all the heavy data.
Cool. Yeah. So a lot of different ways to go about it. I think we're running like close to the end of the hour, so I'll go ahead and ask one last question, and I'll keep it pretty open, but seed it. What are next steps here in terms of really promoting and adopting the right best practices for the right intents, right? I think we talked a lot about model hierarchy today, and a lot of the behaviors that you hang off of that, such that when you do open a scene with all the payloads unloaded, you have a lot, you already have a lot of useful information there that you could even build visual workflows off of. What are some lightweight tools, diagnostics that could help move us forward here, Paulo?
It's a good question, because like out of the box there is very little at the moment, but like various hosts are sort of catching up, different apps, if you look at them, like all the tools are trying to catch up with what is possible. So we are experimenting internally with, as Seb mentioned, how do we describe what we really want to tell the users that it's in the scene? Because you don't want to tell them that you got like 500 million primitives for whatever reason, right? Like what is important there? That important part is definitely based on the asset structure. So there is a connection in between. We cannot ask the side effects or the Autodesk or you guys in Omniverse to say like, hey, why don't you have an outliner that shows only what we care about, because maybe it's our asset structure and we cannot ask you to do that. It would be interesting to see how we can work together to say, how can we drive how the outliner actually works, maybe with some metadata on the actual USD prims. But I think giving a good understanding of what's in the scene is definitely something that we are working on. How do we describe the different representations through the variants that are present on the different asset levels, and how do we provide how many implicit prototypes have been created, where they're actually coming from, how is the SIGGRAPH instancing working? Like, are we creating too many exemplars? Do we just have to, or prototypes, as USD calls them? Do we have a way of reducing the memory usage in trying to have more implicit instancing going on through the scene? So there is a lot of that, because on large scenes, memory usage, both system and video memory usage, are pretty important. So that's going to be a way of sort of like providing diagnostic tools, but also to give a sense of what's in the scene without giving too many information that are not going to be useful to the users.
Yeah, Seb?
I don't have anything to add. I think what Paulo said was really, capturing it, and I'm quite keen to hear what Christian has to say about this. So I'll let him.
Thank you, Paulo. I agree on the diagnostics side of things. I think one of our biggest challenges on figuring out how to maximize our asset structure is in as we go through a show, we realize that a shot is no longer opening, for example, or just it's not rendering. And the entities need to go in and just figure out why is that. And at the moment, we don't have the best ergonomics or the best experience at just figuring out exactly how is all of this information allocated in memory, like from the USD side or at render time. Like we have like different tools, but it takes a while for somebody to get used to this. And so I think that just having an ecosystem that allows you to navigate and inspect the scene at the different levels from the composition side of things all the way to rendering would be really good. It will definitely help in just evolving the asset structures into more efficient, performant ways. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe as a part of that, like sort of validation and conforming to like standards is going to be more and more important as we go. And I mean, to me, like that is spreading out USD and sort of like getting it into all the various ecosystems, like in a really well supported way is just going to be super exciting going forward, right? So it's sort of like picking up from what Paulo was saying, where like all the different tools have like a certain level of support at the moment, and we can see that like grow over the years, but we also see like more and more tools, also in other industries, sort of like picking up on that. And so the Alliance for OpenUSD is like a component of that, where we really like working with different industries to like foster the ecosystem for USD. And then as a part of that, it's going to go into cloud as well. So we're going to have this sort of like HTML of 3D like coming through, and we're going to see a lot of like cloud services. So like I think the validation thing, for example, is something that might make a lot of sense as a cloud service. You have like a web server and you're sending a USD to that, and you just say like validate this for me, or check that it's conformed to some certain USD asset schema standard, for example. And so that will really help with interop and the ecosystem at large. So I think that's super exciting. And yeah, we're just at the beginning of all of that, right?
And I'll add that I'm seeing it in the chat as well as sharing where we can, so we can understand how each of us are using model hierarchy and asset structures. It'll help tool builders. It'll help the DCCs. I know that the ASWF Assets Working Group is asking for asset structure examples to include in the repository. And when I joined USD Interest in 2018, it was a hot topic, and we're still talking about it today. So I think it'd be great to not forget how important it is to share this information.
Good point. I'm going to suggest, since we are really running almost, this hour has gone by so quick. I'm hoping we could do something really quick though, because we got some great questions earlier. So I'm going to call this segment "Attack of the Omnivores." I'm going to play a few questions that came in from the community, the videos. The challenge to the panel though is to try to answer this as quickly as possible. So whoever's got an answer first, you speak it and speak it in as few words as possible. We'll see if we can get through a few of these before we maybe hang out with the community in the Discord afterwards. Okay, so we're going to start off with Mr. Christopher Scott, who also submitted a video. I'll watch this for 1 second.
Hi, Chris Scott here. My question to the Weta team would be, what feature of OpenUSD do you think is underutilized? And then what do you guys do or can be done that people use it more or utilize it more? Thank you.
All right, who's going to take that? Paolo, you're smiling. You have an answer in your head.
Well, rapidly, like there are a lot of unknowns yet, like that we are all working like to try to figure out exactly how to use them. But composition arcs, use them down to like the very single part, like exactly which one comes first and which one comes after, and whether you need to publish some different components in different ways. And SIGGRAPH instancing. I think it's pretty important for large scenes. So use it as much as you can.
Okay, that's a good one. Here we got one from Michael Wagner, also an Omniverse ambassador, who's well, his credits on the slide, but we'll take a look at this.
So my question would be, as you can read a lot about radiance field rendering approaches like NeRF or Gaussian splatting, are you aware of any support coming for that in OpenUSD or in Omniverse in general?
All right, who's going to take that? A lot of nobody probably has an answer to that right now. I'm guessing. Ashley, you know. No, I'm just kidding.
No. It's past my bedtime. My brain's not working.
I can imagine some approaches to that using USD volume, but yeah, it's a burgeoning field. Yeah.
Are we going to say something? Somebody?
It's more like a rendering thing, right? Like maybe than USD. You know, I'm sure there will be solutions to render USD in various forms. And then, yeah, I guess the flip side of that is what Aaron mentioned, is like if you want to have some sort of prim in USD that represents, let's say, you know, a Gaussian splat, then that could be modeled similar to USD vol, to the volume schemas.
Right, or even like a USD point cloud with prim bars on it, right, or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, we got a good question here from Z Ideas, who I also see him in the chat, but he submitted this video a little earlier. Let's take a look.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Thank you for taking my question. Love your work. My question here is, gamers, I've noticed for a long time, have been able to play together. But as a digital artist, I'm often stuck behind my desk. I'm not able to create or play together in real time with my fellow artists. Not the way I see gamers playing. But now that USD allows real-time collaboration between digital artists, I'm curious, how might this affect Weta's workflow? How will this change things at Weta?
There you go.
Again, briefly, I think like we have a very strong version pipeline. Like every single bit that it's published by a single artist is versioned. Real-time collaboration, it's not a thing that we try to maybe aim for, but we would like to see things happening live. So as soon as you are able to load a latest version published by someone, you definitely want to be able to pick it on and load it in real time in your scene. But you always have to go back and saying like, I rendered my images, and on the dailies you're looking at it, you definitely want to know what version of what asset or what textures was actually used for that specific pixel. And so it's good for prototyping something up. So the whole interactivity in the viewport is important when you are building up something randomly, but as soon as you start publishing and working on actual assets, you want to start isolating the different tasks and version the individual bits and pieces.
Very good, thank you. Okay, one more quick question. This is from Rafi Nizam.
As we approach the end of the year, what pain points are you looking forward to seeing eliminated by USD in 2024?
There's probably a long list of them, but what would be your top pain point that you'd like to see go away next year, thanks to USD?
But one of them in like, you know, that sort of feeds into the whole ecosystem thing and cloud thing, and that I've alluded to earlier, was like just the versioning of those, you know, asset structure schemas is something that I'd love to see tackled. So, you know, we can kind of reason about the structure of USD is implementing, you know, an asset structure XYZ that describes a mechanical engineering model, for example, or this one here is like a gaming character, and so on. So that would be great to see.
All right, very good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, thanks for humoring me with the tackling the Omniverse section. What we're going to do now, I posted a link in the chat to our Discord servers, community room #1. So anyone on the panel is invited to come over there, hang out with anyone in the community who's watching, wants to come ask your question face-to-face live, you can do that. And what we're going to do now, so there you go. It's easy to remember. And then what we're going to do now is I'm going to close out this stream playing a couple of videos from people explaining why they love and are using OpenUSD. In that time, the panelists, you don't have to watch those videos. You can head over to the Discord. Well, this is for everybody else. And I want to thank the community for joining. I want to thank this great panel. Does anyone have any closing thoughts, Aaron or anybody else?
Just happy early holidays to the community.
Yeah, happy holidays. And honestly, I want to kind of pass forward what Maddie said. Just keep sharing about USD and that knowledge. Like, just keep going. I've just kind of been sitting here absorbing from everybody here, just their knowledge, and I keep hearing some key terms that y'all have been throwing out, and it's just been exciting to hear some of this stuff from the experts. And I will agree, 1 hour is not enough for this conversation.
That's true. Next time we'll do a little mini marathon. And so Jen and Ashley are in a couple of really great streams. Ashley, when's your next stream coming up?
Probably not till next year, because I'm on some really cool things happening and they take priority. So as much as I miss live streaming, right now it's on hold. So
all right. Well, when they're back, they'll be on the Ed event calendar. So we'll put that in the description. Any closing thoughts from anybody else? Otherwise, we can. You guys can all head to Discord if you can, and so you can leave the studio at the bottom. I'll play a couple of videos for everybody's benefit from some great people in the community and why they use USD.
I have one more thing. I wanted to also plug the AOUSD forum. So we'll have this hangout at Discord, but there's also lots of experts on the forum that are often answering questions. So I encourage you to ask questions there as well.
That's right. It does not end with this live stream or with a hangout in a few minutes on Discord. You'd leverage that AOUSD forum. It's a great place. And for companies who want to learn more, getting involved, that's a great website too, AOUSD. I want to thank everybody for coming on. Really appreciate it. Really fun hour, action-packed. I could tell our community's got a lot of stuff to think about. So this is super informative. All right, so we'll see everybody on Discord. Thank you. And I'm going to close out the stream by playing a couple of videos. Like I said, this one's from Digital Bot Lab. So this is why they like USD.
So I like working with USD because of its streamlined handling of complex 3D scenes, often with animations and complex materials or multiple complex materials all within them, all seem to get handled very easily.
And one thing I like most about OpenUSD is its potential to bring AI industry and art together. Using the same format, we can do 3D animation, we can modify and manipulate robots, and also we can develop manufacturer and industrial applications.
And also it just feels really nice to be working in a format that looks set to be the industry standard for many years to come.
I want to thank Digital Bot Lab for sending in that video. We've got another video here from Michael Wagner on why his team loves the OpenUSD. People may recall a little earlier, Michael is the CTO of Epolog, and he's the founder of SyncTwin, which is bringing digital twins to many more companies. You just need to check out SyncTwin. Very cool. All right, here's Michael.
What really excites me about OpenUSD in digital factories is its ability to bring different areas like assembly planning, logistics, and building management into a single unified digital model. It allows each department to contribute their expertise while building upon the work of others, enhancing collaboration. Many are impressed by the stunning visuals that OpenUSD together with NVIDIA Omniverse can achieve. However, it's the inclusion of detailed metadata, semantics, and behaviors within the USD assets that I find truly groundbreaking. This not only enhances visual simulations, but also supports various analytical and operational tools that don't rely solely on graphics. I think the best thing about OpenUSD is how it helps us to get out of working in separate bubbles and start building the industrial metaverse together.
Michael, that was great. And you can definitely see and hear more from him coming up. I encourage everyone to check out the blog story on SyncTwin. And before we go, I have one more video to share. This is from Rafi from Falcon and Storm, who we heard from a little earlier with a question. He's going to talk a little bit about why they use USD there. This is a few minutes long, and it's well worth it. So we'll watch this and then close out the stream.
Rafi, co-founder of Falcon and Storm, a story studio based in London with global clients. For clients in the tech sector, we bring meaning to their amazing technology with character-driven storytelling. And our work forges kind of like an emotional connection between tech and people, leading to better product market fit and driving growth, particularly helpful for startups. Our use of USD ensures efficient management of 3D assets, whether it's iterating through concepts or incorporating final designs into a narrative scene. USD's structure allows us to manage those assets effectively and non-destructively. This results in a smoother workflow, reducing time and effort spent on asset handling, importing, rebuilding materials, and so on. And in the context of startups, where rapid iteration and adaptation are kind of crucial, USD's real-time collaboration features have become kind of invaluable to our capabilities as a studio. The ability to have multiple team members working on different aspects of a central project simultaneously fosters quicker decision-making and kind of accelerates the overall production process with those clients. Now, some of our clients are established media companies too. And at Falcon and Storm, we kind of help them make smarter choices in tech to advance their production and storytelling capabilities and kind of adapt to rapid change. Now, given the competitive landscape, especially in the VFX industry, the cost effectiveness of the workflow is crucial. USD's ability to streamline processes and reduce disparities between cost and effort is evident in the projects that we've consulted on, and it ensures that storytelling and vision remains paramount without compromising the efficiency and competitiveness of the production process. Now, there's a lot of opportunity there. In the chaotic realm of virtual production shoots, coordinating is everything. And the way Omniverse Nucleus manages USD, it kind of helps a lot with the work we do there. Leading creative teams from previs all the way through to on-set live edits and changes is really helped by the live synchronization of assets between crew members and their apps. And this is the kind of real-time collaboration that was always the promise of virtual production, right? It's like we're all jamming together in the same creative band when we're, in the USD framework. And adopting that framework has opened up our capabilities as a story studio. USD has become the sort of technical backbone of my creative process for 3D production, which was once an opaque and convoluted and kind of inaccessible medium for me as a creator, but that is rapidly changing. In essence, USD empowers us to create meaningful storytelling and keep it at the forefront of our consultancy because the foundational tech is so nimble and open in the CG paradigm. Now, beyond our client work, we're really excited to tell our own stories with the original scripted animated series, Artina's Art Squad. The biggest benefit for me is interoperability. In the sprawling landscape of 3D creation, having a unified language is kind of a superpower. And thanks to USD, the rigmarole of building materials manually in each app, troubleshooting the integrity of each asset and exporting it in a specific way for each of those apps is thankfully a thing of the past. And this common exchange format is like a sand pit where I'm building castles with anything I like, and it's always intuitive and as organic as CG production has ever been for me. As an independent showrunner of my own animated kids show, taking my world-building ambitions and executing them into detailed sets and intricate environments is now actually manageable, whereas before it was unthinkable for me. This system helps me keep track and develop the visual identity of Artina's art squad. Sometimes I use a VR for scene layouts, and sometimes I design in Substance Painter with my Cintiq or ray trace in Omniverse. It's kind of like the ultimate sanity check for someone running the show solo, and a safety net because they all sync so nicely together. Now let me be real with you, before USD these tasks were like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. But now with OpenUSD and Omniverse, it's like someone handed me cheat codes to the game. And I've navigated through the foundations, and I'm just starting to now create 3D in a way that I really love. And it's super exciting.